What would you do if your entire marriage was built on a lie? In a luxury hotel room in Orlando, Florida, a newlywed husband held bloodied papers in his trembling hands. The documents revealed a truth so explosive, it would transform their fairy tale wedding into international headlines within hours. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they weren't who you thought they were? Most of us have experienced betrayal in relationships, but this story takes deception to a level that shattered two lives forever. Before we continue, hit that like button if you're ready for a case that challenges everything you think you know about love, identity, and the dangerous price of keeping secrets. This isn't just another crime story. This is about Khalid Rahman and Layla Al-Hariri, two people whose love story began in the glittering towers of Dubai and ended in an American courtroom, leaving behind questions that still divide communities worldwide. Do you know someone who's hidden their true identity to protect themselves? The answer might be closer than you think, because what happened to this couple exposes a deadly reality: when shame meets rage, violence often follows. On their third night as husband and wife, Khalid discovered medical records that revealed his bride's most guarded secret, one she'd kept hidden not out of malice, but out of pure survival instinct. What he read in those documents triggered a chain of events so violent, so devastating, that it would forever change how we view trust in marriage. The problem? In a world where being different can mean being dangerous, Layla faced an impossible choice: reveal her truth and risk everything, or stay silent and pray love would be enough. But here's what no one expected: when the truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't lead to understanding or compassion. Instead, it would lead to a hotel room covered in blood, police sirens wailing through the Florida night, and a legal battle that would expose the darkest corners of honor, identity, and intimate partner violence. Has someone you trusted ever made you question everything you believed about yourself? That's exactly what happened to both Khalid and Layla, but only one of them would survive the revelation with their freedom intact. Tonight, we're diving deep into a case that forced courts in two countries to grapple with questions they'd never faced before. When does keeping a secret become fraud? When does feeling betrayed justify violence? And most importantly, who decides whether someone deserves love based on their past? The answers will shock you, challenge you, and maybe even change how you think about the people closest to you. So buckle up, because this journey takes us from the golden streets of Dubai to a blood-stained hotel room in America, revealing truths about marriage, identity, and justice that will leave you questioning everything. Dubai's Marina district sparkled that evening in March, hosting yet another corporate gala where business cards exchanged hands like poker chips. Among the crowd of petroleum executives and financial advisors stood Khalid Rahman, 34, impeccably dressed, but noticeably alone. Khalid wasn't just any attendee. As a senior petroleum engineer for one of Abu Dhabi's largest oil companies, he commanded respect in boardrooms across the Gulf. His colleagues knew him as methodical, intelligent, and surprisingly humble for someone earning 7 figures annually. Yet despite his professional success, Khalid carried a burden that grew heavier with each passing family gathering. His mother called weekly. "When will you give me grandchildren, Habibi?" His father was more direct: "A man your age without a wife looks suspicious." People talk. In their culture, marriage wasn't just personal, it was social currency. Khalid understood this, but years of failed relationships had left him cautious. Women either wanted his wealth or couldn't handle his traditional values. He'd almost given up hope when fate intervened through the most unexpected encounter. Layla Al-Hariri glided through the gala like she owned every conversation. Standing near the champagne fountain, she engaged a circle of businessmen in animated discussion about sustainable energy investments. Her laugh was musical, her English flawless, and her presence magnetic in ways Khalid couldn't quite articulate. She wore confidence like expensive jewelry, subtle but undeniably valuable. When their eyes met across the room, something electric passed between them. Khalid, normally reserved at social events, found himself walking over before his mind could object. "You seem to know more about renewable energy than half the executives here," he said, extending his hand. Layla's smile was radiant. Knowledge is power, and power is survival. I'm Layla. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. She spoke of growing up between Dubai and Doha, studying in Europe, and dreaming of building something meaningful beyond the Gulf's traditional boundaries. Khalid was captivated not just by her beauty, but by her intellect and ambition. Most men find ambitious women threatening, Layla confided as the evening wound down. Most men are insecure, Khalid replied. I find it attractive. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Khalid had never experienced connection like this, someone who challenged his thoughts while respecting his values, who laughed at his jokes while pushing him to think bigger. Layla seemed to understand him in ways previous relationships never had. She was mysterious, though. Her family was always traveling, she claimed, scattered across Lebanon and Qatar. When Khalid asked to meet them, she deflected gracefully. They're very traditional, she'd say. Let's give them time to adjust to the idea of me with someone new. Khalid didn't press. In Gulf culture, family dynamics could be complex, especially for women balancing modern careers with traditional expectations. He respected her need for privacy. What he saw was a woman who made him laugh, challenged his perspectives, and shared his dreams of building something lasting together. Layla spoke passionately about travel, about experiencing life beyond the constraints of regional expectations, about raising children who would be global citizens. I want to live somewhere we can just be ourselves, she told him one evening as they watched the sunset from his apartment balcony. Somewhere love matters more than labels. Khalid felt the same way. America, they agreed, represented that freedom, a place where their love could flourish without the weight of family expectations and social scrutiny. After 8 months of courtship, Khalid proposed at the same Marina hotel where they'd met. His parents were thrilled to finally meet the woman who'd captured their son's heart, though they found her family's absence curious. Her relatives live abroad, Khalid explained. We'll meet them eventually. The engagement period was blissful. Wedding planning revealed Layla's impeccable taste and attention to detail. She handled vendor negotiations with the precision of a business executive while maintaining the grace of someone born into luxury. Yet small moments gave Khalid pause. Layla deflected questions about her medical history, citing privacy concerns. She joked away conversations about having children, saying they had plenty of time to discuss such serious matters. During their brief moments of physical intimacy, she was sometimes hesitant, though Khalid attributed this to modesty and respect for their unmarried status. These were minor concerns overshadowed by genuine compatibility. They shared values, dreams, and a vision for their future that felt more real than anything Khalid had previously experienced. The wedding itself was magnificent, a celebration at Dubai's most exclusive venue, with flowers flown in from Holland and entertainment that had guests talking for weeks. Layla looked radiant in her custom gown, and Khalid felt like the luckiest man alive. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, surrounded by friends and colleagues, Khalid whispered in Layla's ear, "We did it. We're finally free to be ourselves." She smiled, but he caught something in her eyes he couldn't identify, relief mixed with what looked almost like fear. The flight to Orlando represented more than a honeymoon trip, it symbolized freedom. As their Emirates flight descended toward Florida, Khalid squeezed Layla's hand and smiled. No family expectations, no business calls, no cultural pressure. Just us. Layla nodded, though her grip seemed tighter than necessary. Their hotel suite was everything luxury travel promised: marble bathrooms, panoramic views of the city, and enough space to feel like a private residence. Khalid had spared no expense because this wasn't just a vacation, it was the beginning of their real life together. The first day unfolded like a dream. They explored Universal Studios like teenagers, rode roller coasters with abandon, and ate ice cream while walking hand in hand through crowds of tourists. For hours, they were just another happy couple on their honeymoon, invisible among thousands of other love stories playing out in the Florida sunshine. That evening, over dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the theme parks, Khalid raised his champagne glass. To new beginnings, he toasted. To being free to love without fear, Layla responded. Her words struck Khalid as oddly specific, but the moment felt too perfect to analyze. They talked about their future, maybe moving to America permanently, starting a business together, traveling the world before settling down to raise children. How many kids do you want? Khalid asked playfully. Layla's smile faltered for just a moment. Let's enjoy being married first. There's so much we still need to discover about each other. It was a reasonable response, yet something in her tone felt evasive. Khalid pushed the thought aside. They had their whole lives to discuss such details. The second day brought subtle shifts. During breakfast, Khalid noticed Layla checking her phone constantly, her face tense as she scrolled through messages. Everything okay? He asked. Just some work issues back home, she replied quickly, putting the phone away. But work issues didn't usually require such secretive behavior. When Khalid tried to glimpse her screen, Layla angled it away protectively. The gesture felt defensive in a way that didn't match their usual openness. That afternoon, while shopping for souvenirs, Khalid suggested they pick up something for her family. What would your parents like from America? Layla froze. They're not really the souvenir type. What about your sister you mentioned? The one who loves American fashion? She's traveling right now. Very busy. Every question about her family met similar deflection. Khalid began noticing how Layla changed the subject whenever personal history arose. He'd known her for months, yet realized he knew remarkably little about her past beyond surface details. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Khalid tried addressing his growing unease directly. Layla, we're married now. We should be able to talk about anything. She looked at him in the mirror as she brushed her hair. What do you mean? You seem uncomfortable whenever I ask about your family, your past, even your thoughts about our future. Are you hiding something from me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Layla set down her brush and turned to face him. Marriage is about trust, Khalid. Can't you trust that I love you without knowing every detail of my history? Of course I trust you. But marriage is also about transparency. We're building a life together. Layla's eyes filled with something that looked like panic. Some things are better left in the past. Does it matter who I was before, as long as you know who I am now? The conversation ended there, but Khalid couldn't shake the feeling that his wife was carrying secrets too heavy for their new marriage to bear. He lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what truths were hidden behind Layla's careful words. If you're enjoying this deep exploration of how secrets can poison relationships, make sure to subscribe for more cases that expose the dangerous intersection of love, lies, and violence. The third day started normally enough. They had room service breakfast, planned to visit Disney World, and Layla seemed more relaxed than she'd been since their arrival. For a few hours, Khalid allowed himself to believe his concerns were unfounded, just honeymoon jitters magnified by the pressure of a new marriage. But fate rarely waits for convenient timing. Sometimes the most life-changing discoveries happen in the most mundane moments. While searching for a phone charger in a suitcase, while your spouse showers, while you're thinking about anything except the secret that's about to explode your entire world. Khalid had no idea that afternoon would mark the last peaceful hours of their marriage. He couldn't know that within hours, their hotel room would be filled with police officers, paramedics, and enough blood to stain more than just carpet. All he knew was that his phone needed charging, and Layla's suitcase was partially unzipped nearby. What he found inside would change everything. Khalid's phone battery had died during their morning at the theme park, leaving him disconnected from work emails he'd promised to monitor. As Layla started her evening shower, he remembered seeing his charger earlier near her luggage. Her suitcase sat partially open on the chair, expensive clothes carefully folded inside. Khalid lifted the top layer of garments, searching for the familiar white cord. Instead, his fingers brushed against a manila folder. He wouldn't have opened it, privacy was important to him, but the folder had shifted, revealing medical documents with Layla's name clearly visible. Concerned she might have a health condition she hadn't mentioned, Khalid pulled out the papers. The first document made his blood freeze. Gender reassignment surgery, post-operative report. Khalid's hands began trembling as he read further. Hormone therapy records. Psychiatric evaluations. Surgery schedules from a clinic in Switzerland. Page after page of medical history documenting a transition from male to female, completed over several years. The name on every document was unmistakably his wife's. The photographs attached showed progression from someone who looked nothing like the woman he'd married to the Layla he thought he knew. His world didn't just crack, it shattered completely. Every memory recontextualized itself in seconds. Layla's reluctance to discuss children. Her evasiveness about family. Her mysterious medical privacy. Her hesitation during intimate moments. The missing relatives who could have provided background information. Khalid's breathing became shallow as rage and betrayal flooded his system. He felt nauseated, betrayed, and completely deceived. In his mind, their entire relationship had been built on the most fundamental lie possible. The shower was still running. Layla had no idea her secret had been discovered. Khalid sat on the bed, medical papers scattered around him, trying to process what felt like the complete destruction of his identity as a husband, a man, and a person who believed in honesty. How long had she planned this deception? Had she married him knowing she would never tell him the truth? Did she laugh about his ignorance when he spoke about having children, about building a traditional family? Minutes passed like hours. When the shower stopped, Khalid arranged the papers across the bedspread. He would confront her directly. No more lies, no more evasion, no more excuses about privacy and trust. The bathroom door opened. Layla stepped out wrapped in a hotel towel, hair wet, humming softly. The moment she saw Khalid's face, the humming stopped. Then she saw the papers. The color drained from her face completely. She looked like someone who'd been caught in a crime scene, which, in Khalid's mind, was exactly what had happened. What is this? Khalid's voice was barely controlled, shaking with rage. Layla's lips moved, but no sound came out. She stood frozen in the doorway, water from her hair dripping onto the carpet. What is this? He shouted, grabbing the medical documents and waving them at her. Khalid, please let me explain. Explain? Explain? His voice cracked. You've been lying to me since the day we met. Our entire marriage is a lie. Layla stepped closer, her hands raised defensively. It's not a lie. I am who I am. I am the woman you fell in love with, you're not a woman. Khalid screamed. You're a man who's been pretending to be a woman. You deceived me into marrying a lie. Tears streamed down Layla's face. I was born in the wrong body, but I've been living as who I truly am for years. The woman you married is real. My love for you is real, nothing about you is real. Khalid stood up, the papers crumpling in his fists. Did you think I would never find out? Did you plan to lie to me forever? I wanted to tell you, Layla sobbed. But I was terrified. In our culture, you know what happens to people like me. I could be killed. My family already rejected me. I couldn't risk losing you too. You never gave me the choice. You stole my choice by lying. The argument escalated rapidly. Khalid felt his entire sense of self collapsing. In his mind, he'd been tricked into a marriage with someone who had fundamentally misrepresented their identity. He felt emasculated, humiliated, and completely betrayed. Layla tried desperately to explain her journey. The years of struggling with identity, the rejection from family, the surgeries that had saved her from suicide. The careful construction of a life where she could finally be herself. I didn't lie to hurt you, she pleaded. I lied to survive. You don't understand what it's like to live in fear every single day. But Khalid was beyond hearing explanations. His rage had taken complete control. To him, this wasn't about identity or survival, it was about deception at the most intimate level possible. You made me into a fool, he snarled. Everyone will know I was tricked into marrying a man. My honor, my reputation, my family's name, you've destroyed everything. What happened next would haunt both of them forever, though only one would live to tell the full story. The distance between them closed in seconds. Khalid's anger transformed into violence, and the hotel room became a crime scene that would make international headlines within hours. The first blow came without warning. Khalid's open palm struck Layla across the face with enough force to send her stumbling backward. The towel fell as she crashed into the bathroom doorframe, her shoulder taking the impact with a sickening crack. You ruined my life. Khalid roared, advancing on her. You destroyed my honor. Layla tried to shield herself with her arms, but Khalid's rage had transformed him into someone she'd never seen before. This wasn't the gentleman who'd proposed at the marina, who'd held her hand through turbulence on their flight, who'd whispered sweet words during their wedding dance. This was a stranger consumed by fury and humiliation. His second strike was a closed fist to her ribs. The impact drove the air from her lungs, leaving her gasping. She tried to speak, to plead, to explain, but Khalid was beyond reason. Please, she managed to whisper. Please, Khalid, I love you, don't you dare say you love me. He grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the bathroom wall. You don't even know what love means. Love is honesty. Love is truth. Layla's vision began to blur as his grip tightened. She clawed at his hands, desperate for air, but Khalid's strength overpowered her completely. Years of gym workouts and manual labor had given him muscles she couldn't match. You humiliated me, he hissed in her ear. Do you know what people will say when they find out? Do you know what this does to my family's reputation? He released her throat only to strike her stomach. Layla doubled over, retching, as waves of pain radiated through her body. She could taste blood in her mouth now, could feel it trickling from her nose. The medical papers were still scattered across the bed, evidence of the secret that had triggered this nightmare. In her peripheral vision, Layla could see them, documentation of her journey to become herself, now serving as kindling for violence. I should have told you, she gasped, trying to crawl away from him. I should have been honest, too late for honesty now. Khalid kicked her in the ribs, and she felt something inside her chest shift unnaturally. You had months to tell me the truth. Our entire engagement was based on lies. Layla's survival instincts kicked in. She tried to make it to the hotel room door, hoping to escape into the hallway where other guests might help her. But Khalid anticipated her movement, grabbing her hair and yanking her backward. The pain shot through her scalp like electricity. She screamed, a sound of pure terror that echoed through the hotel room and into the hallway beyond. Shut up. Khalid demanded, striking her face again. Don't wake the whole hotel. But damage was done. In the room next door, an elderly couple from Michigan heard the scream and the sound of furniture being overturned. The husband reached for the hotel phone while his wife pressed her ear to the wall, listening to the terrifying sounds of violence. Khalid didn't know they were calling security. He was lost in his rage, completely consumed by feelings of betrayal and humiliation. Each blow was fueled by months of what he now perceived as deception, by the collapse of his dream marriage, by the imagined ridicule he would face when people discovered the truth. You made me love a lie, he screamed, grabbing a heavy glass ashtray from the nightstand. Layla saw the ashtray rising above her head and knew she was about to die. In that moment, her mind went completely clear. She thought about her journey, the teenage years of confusion and pain, the family who had rejected her, the surgeries that had finally aligned her body with her identity, the careful construction of a life where she could be herself. She thought about meeting Khalid, about genuinely falling in love with his kindness and intelligence. She thought about their wedding day, dancing in his arms, feeling finally accepted and loved. Most of all, she thought about how unfair it was that her truth, her survival, was about to get her killed. The ashtray descended toward her skull. At that exact moment, hotel security burst through the door. Two uniformed officers had used their master key after receiving the emergency call about domestic violence. They entered to find a blood-spattered hotel room and a scene of brutal assault in progress. "Stop!" "Security," the first officer shouted, drawing his radio to call for police backup. Khalid froze, the ashtray still raised above his head. For a moment, he seemed to realize what he was doing, what he had become. The rage in his eyes flickered, replaced briefly by confusion and horror at his own actions. But it was too late to undo the damage. Layla lay curled on the floor, blood pooling beneath her head, her breathing shallow and labored. The medical papers were scattered around her like confetti, evidence of the secret that had triggered this nightmare. "Sir, drop the weapon and step back," the security officer commanded. Khalid let the ashtray fall from his hands. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, inches from Layla's head. The second officer was already calling 911. "We need paramedics immediately. Female victim, severe beating, possible internal injuries. Suspect is detained." Within minutes, the hotel room filled with police officers, paramedics, and crime scene technicians. Khalid was handcuffed and read his rights while medical personnel worked frantically to stabilize Layla's injuries. As the paramedics loaded Layla onto a stretcher, one of the officers noticed the medical documents scattered around the room. He collected them as evidence, not yet understanding how central they would become to the legal proceedings that followed. This case shows us how quickly love can turn deadly when secrets collide with rage. If this story is opening your eyes to the hidden dangers of domestic violence, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. The ambulance carrying Layla disappeared into the Florida night, sirens wailing. Inside the hotel room, investigators photographed blood spatters, collected evidence, and tried to piece together what had transformed a honeymoon suite into a crime scene. Khalid sat in the back of a police car, staring at his bloodied hands, finally beginning to comprehend the magnitude of what he'd done. His marriage was over. His freedom was over. His life as he'd known it was over. But most importantly, he'd nearly ended someone else's life because he couldn't handle a truth that challenged his understanding of love and identity. The legal system was about to teach him that violence is never justified, no matter how profound the betrayal feels. The Orange County Courthouse had seen thousands of domestic violence cases, but few generated the international attention that surrounded the state of Florida versus Khalid Rahman. Within 48 hours of his arrest, the story exploded across social media platforms and news networks worldwide. Headlines ranged from sensationalized clickbait to thoughtful examinations of transgender rights and intimate partner violence. The case had everything modern media craved: international intrigue, cultural conflict, gender identity, and shocking violence. Khalid's mugshot appeared on screens from Dubai to Detroit, his once respectable image now forever associated with brutality. District Attorney Margaret Santos assigned her most experienced prosecutors to the case. They faced a unique challenge, proving that regardless of the circumstances that triggered Khalid's rage, his response constituted inexcusable criminal violence. "This isn't about gender identity or cultural differences," Santos announced at a press conference. "This is about a man who nearly beat his wife to death because he didn't like what he learned about her medical history." The defense team, led by prominent criminal attorney Robert Chin, took a different approach. They didn't try to justify Khalid's actions. The evidence was too overwhelming, but instead attempted to frame them within a context of psychological trauma and cultural conditioning. "My client was the victim of a deliberate deception that shattered his entire worldview," Chen argued during preliminary hearings. He was manipulated into a marriage based on fundamentally false premises. While violence is never acceptable, we must understand the psychological state that led to this tragic moment. The prosecution fired back immediately. Deception, even significant deception, does not justify attempted murder. Millions of people discover uncomfortable truths about their partners without resorting to violence. The defendant made a choice to beat a vulnerable woman rather than seek divorce, counseling, or any of the civilized responses available to him. As the trial date approached, both sides prepared for a complex legal battle that would force the court system to navigate uncharted territory. Layla's recovery became public knowledge through carefully managed media releases from her attorney. She'd survived, but the physical damage was severe. 3 broken ribs, a fractured orbital bone, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury that affected her short-term memory. More devastating were the psychological wounds. Post-traumatic stress disorder left her unable to sleep through the night. She flinched at unexpected sounds, had panic attacks in confined spaces, and required therapy to manage the trauma of nearly being killed by someone who'd claimed to love her. Yet Layla made a decision that surprised everyone: she would testify against her attacker. "I refuse to let shame win," she said in a statement released through her legal team. "I survived this attack, and I'll survive the trial. My story needs to be heard, not just for me, but for every transgender person who lives in fear of violence when their truth is discovered." The trial began on a humid Tuesday in September. The courthouse steps filled with protesters representing multiple causes. Domestic violence advocates, transgender rights activists, religious groups, and cultural organizations from the Middle Eastern community. Judge Patricia Williams had 23 years of experience on the bench, but acknowledged this case presented unprecedented challenges. "This courtroom will focus on facts, evidence, and law," she announced during jury selection. "Personal opinions about gender identity, cultural practices, or marriage rights are not relevant to determining whether the defendant committed the crimes he's charged with." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Crime scene photographs showed the blood-spattered hotel room. Hospital records documented Layla's extensive injuries. Security footage from the hotel hallway captured Khalid's violent demeanor when police arrived. But the most powerful moment came when Layla took the witness stand. Wearing a conservative blue dress, speaking quietly but clearly, she walked the jury through her relationship with Khalid. She acknowledged keeping her medical history private, explaining the genuine fear that had motivated her silence. "In my community, being transgender can mean death," she testified. "I'd already lost my family because of who I am. The thought of losing the man I loved was unbearable, so I convinced myself that if he truly loved me, my past wouldn't matter." "Did you intend to deceive Mr. Rahman?" the prosecutor asked. "I intended to protect myself," Layla replied. "I was wrong to keep secrets, but I never intended to hurt him. I just wanted to be loved for who I am, not condemned for who I used to be." During cross-examination, the defense tried to paint Layla as manipulative and calculating. Chen suggested she deliberately targeted Khalid because his traditional background made him less likely to question her identity. "You researched my client's family, his cultural values, his desire for a traditional marriage, didn't you?" Chen pressed. "I fell in love with him," Layla answered simply. "Love doesn't require research." The defense case focused heavily on psychological testimony. Expert witnesses explained how cultural conditioning could create explosive reactions when core beliefs were challenged. They described Khalid's mental state as a form of temporary insanity brought on by profound betrayal. Dr. Ahmad Hassan, a psychiatrist specializing in cross-cultural psychology, testified that Khalid's violent reaction was predictable given his cultural background and the nature of the revelation. "In many Middle Eastern cultures, masculinity and honor are intrinsically linked to marriage and family," Dr. Hassan explained. The discovery that his wife was transgender would have created not just personal trauma, but social humiliation that his cultural programming would view as unbearable. The prosecution countered with their own experts, who testified that cultural background might explain someone's emotional reaction but could never justify criminal violence. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, a specialist in domestic violence, testified that intimate partner violence against transgender women was epidemic, particularly when relationships involved men from conservative backgrounds. This case fits a depressingly common pattern, Dr. Rodriguez said. A transgender woman is attacked by a male partner who claims he was deceived. The violence is always framed as justified anger, but it's really about power and control. The defendant chose violence because he viewed his wife as less than human once he learned her history. The testimony revealed uncomfortable truths about how society treats transgender people when their past is discovered. Hit the like button if you believe everyone deserves safety in their relationships, regardless of their gender identity. As the trial continued, it became clear that the legal system was grappling with questions that went far beyond one couple's tragic story. The case was setting precedents about disclosure in relationships, the limits of cultural defenses in criminal law, and society's responsibility to protect vulnerable populations from violence. The verdict would send a message about whether betrayal could ever justify brutality, and whether someone's gender identity made them more or less deserving of justice. The jury deliberated for 3 days. During those 72 hours, the case continued generating global discussion about transgender rights, cultural conflicts in marriage, and the deadly intersection of secrets and violence. Social media platforms buzzed with debates that often revealed more about people's biases than their understanding of the legal issues involved. When the jury returned, the courtroom was packed with media representatives, advocacy groups, and observers from multiple communities invested in the outcome. On the charge of aggravated assault with intent to commit great bodily harm, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of domestic battery causing serious bodily injury, we find the defendant guilty. Khalid showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. His family, who had flown from Dubai to attend the trial, wept openly in the gallery. Judge Williams scheduled sentencing for the following month, but the legal conclusion was only the beginning of this story's broader impact. Layla's decision to speak publicly after the verdict transformed her from victim to advocate, though she insisted she never wanted the role. "I didn't choose to become a symbol," she said during her first television interview after the trial. "I just chose to survive and tell the truth. If my pain can prevent even one person from experiencing what I went through, then something good came from something terrible." Her words resonated internationally. Transgender advocacy organizations used her case to highlight the epidemic of violence against trans women, particularly in intimate relationships. Domestic violence prevention groups incorporated her story into training programs for law enforcement and social workers. In Dubai, reactions were complex and often contradictory. Some viewed Layla as deceptive and Khalid as a victim of fraud. Others recognized the impossible position transgender people face in societies where disclosure can mean exile or death. Dr. Amira Al-Mansouri, one of the few openly LGBTQ+ advocates in the Gulf region, used the case to push for legal protections for gender minorities. "This tragedy illustrates why we need laws protecting people's right to live authentically without fear of violence," Dr. Al-Mansouri said in a carefully worded statement. "When disclosure is dangerous and silence is criminal, people are trapped in impossible situations." The case also sparked conversations about disclosure in relationships. Legal experts debated whether non-disclosure of transgender status constituted fraud in marriage, with most concluding that while it might be grounds for divorce, it could never justify violence. "Marriage is a contract, but it's not a license to commit assault when you don't like the terms," explained family law attorney Janet Morrison. "If someone feels deceived in their relationship, they have legal remedies through divorce court, not through their fists." International human rights organizations used the case to highlight the global crisis facing transgender people. According to advocacy groups, transgender women face murder rates 12 times higher than the general population, with intimate partner violence being a leading cause. Layla's survival makes her lucky compared to too many others who don't live to tell their stories, said Marcus Rivera from the International Trans Rights Coalition. This case shows what happens when society teaches people that deception justifies violence against marginalized communities. The sentencing hearing drew as much attention as the trial itself. Khalid's family pleaded for mercy, describing him as a kind man who'd made a terrible mistake under extraordinary psychological pressure. "My son is not a monster," his mother testified through an interpreter. "He was destroyed by lies and responded like a wounded animal. He needs help, not a lifetime in prison." Layla also spoke at the sentencing, though her statement surprised many observers. "I don't want revenge," she said, addressing the judge while Khalid sat just feet away. "I want justice, which means consequences for violence, but I also want understanding. Khalid was raised in a world that taught him my existence was shameful. The real tragedy is that we both became victims of a society that makes love conditional on conformity." Judge Williams sentenced Khalid to 12 years in prison, followed by deportation to the United Arab Emirates. The sentence was seen as appropriate by most legal experts. Severe enough to reflect the seriousness of the crimes, but not so harsh as to ignore the complex circumstances that had led to the violence. "Violence in intimate relationships destroys lives and communities," Judge Williams said during sentencing. "This court cannot excuse brutality, regardless of the emotional trauma that preceded it. At the same time, we recognize that this tragedy reflects broader social failures in how we discuss identity, acceptance, and love." Khalid was led away in handcuffs, beginning a prison term that would give him years to contemplate how rage had transformed him from husband to criminal in a matter of minutes. The case's impact extended far beyond the courthouse. Universities began incorporating it into curricula about domestic violence, gender studies, and cross-cultural psychology. Law enforcement agencies used it to train officers on handling domestic violence cases involving LGBTQ+ victims. Most importantly, it sparked conversations in families, religious communities, and social groups about acceptance, honesty, and the deadly consequences when love becomes conditional on conformity to narrow expectations. Layla eventually relocated to Canada, where she continued her advocacy work while building a new life far from the trauma of that Florida hotel room. Her story became a powerful reminder that survival sometimes requires extraordinary courage, first to live authentically, then to speak truth in the face of violence. 3 years after that violent night in Orlando, Layla Al-Hariri addressed a conference on transgender rights in Toronto. Standing before an audience of advocates, survivors, and allies, she reflected on a journey that had taken her from victim to voice for the voiceless. "People ask me if I regret not telling Khalid the truth from the beginning," she said. "The answer is complicated. I regret the pain, the violence, the destroyed lives. But I don't regret trying to protect myself in a world that often punishes people for existing authentically." Her words carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom about the dangerous intersection of love, identity, and societal expectations. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of relationships, the limits of cultural understanding, and the price of keeping secrets in a world where truth can be deadly. Khalid's violence was inexcusable, but his story also reveals how cultural conditioning can create explosive reactions when core beliefs are challenged. The tragedy isn't just that he chose violence, it's that he lived in a society that taught him Layla's existence was shameful enough to justify rage. Layla's decision to keep her medical history private was understandable given the genuine dangers transgender people face, but it also demonstrates how fear-based choices can create the very situations we're trying to avoid. The broader lesson transcends gender identity issues. This case is ultimately about what happens when shame meets rage, when cultural expectations collide with individual truth, and when society fails to create spaces for honest conversations about difference. Today, Khalid serves his sentence in a Florida prison, participating in anger management and cultural sensitivity programs. He's expressed remorse for his actions but continues to struggle with accepting his ex-wife's identity. His story serves as a cautionary tale about how quickly love can turn lethal when it's built on conditions rather than acceptance. Layla continues her advocacy work, speaking to audiences worldwide about the need for legal protections, social acceptance, and honest conversations about identity and relationships. Her survival, both physical and emotional, represents hope for countless others living in fear of violence when their truth is discovered. This story challenges all of us to examine our own biases and ask, what would we do if someone we loved revealed a truth that challenged our understanding of them? Would we choose compassion or condemnation? Understanding or violence? The answer to those questions might determine whether love survives truth, or whether secrets continue claiming lives in hotel rooms around the world. If this case has opened your eyes to the hidden struggles faced by transgender people and domestic violence survivors, please like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them. The tragedy of Khalid and Layla reminds us that in a world where being different can be dangerous, the bravest act is often simply choosing to live authentically, and the most important response is choosing to love people for who they are, not who we think they should be. Their story ends in violence and separation, but it doesn't have to end in silence. Every conversation it sparks, every mind it opens, every life it saves makes meaning from senseless brutality. That's the real victory, not the prison sentence or the media attention, but the possibility that their pain might prevent someone else's tragedy. What's your take on this complex case? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more true crime stories that explore the darker corners of human relationships.